Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. Today we're test driving the 2022 Ford Escape plug-in hybrid, and this is a fully loaded titanium model. So we're going to have a good look at it inside and out. We're going to take it for a drive, and then I'm going to tell you what I really think. Before we get on the test drive, let's talk about what we've got. This is a near fully loaded titanium model on the plug-in hybrid Escape. And as tested, we're pricing out at just under $44,000. And you can spend just a little bit more, but we're pretty close to the top. This starting out at just under $40,000 for the lower trim grades. Looking at the styling, this is definitely a lot more car-like than previous generation Ford Escapes. For my eyes, this almost has a French car styling face going on, a little bit of the DNA that we've seen in some of the classic French cars of the 60s and 70s, but that's just my eyes looking at that. In this trim grade, we've got a pretty detailed grille with a bit of sculpting and some chrome, and the headlights on this, LED headlights with a daytime signature that lights up pretty prominently, and these headlights do work very well at night. LED fog lights down in the lower fascia. Wheels on this one, 18-inch alloys with black painted pockets, as you can see there in the picture. And as you can see up top, this has optioned on it the panoramic moonroof, which does have an opening capability. From this angle, you can see that the Ford Escape really is no longer that big, tall, boxy looking SUV. No, here we have more of a car-like silhouette, maybe a tall hatchback, 5-door, and nowhere is that more evident than in the rear three-quarter view, where the window line behind the door and the chrome trim has actually more of a delicate appearance than before. And looking at the rear hatch, this of course is a power hatch. You can operate that with the key fob, put your foot under the bumper, or press a button inside. Looking up at the top of that, that has a built-in spoiler with a third brake light that's very integrated looking. Taillights on this are LED. Looking at the lower bumper, a nice helping of plastic to protect that from scratches, putting things in and out, and below that are dual exhaust tips, even on the hybrid. The location for the plug-in port is right here at the front. My favorite location, makes it easiest to pull into a space where there's a charging station as well as your garage. The interior of this particular Ford Escape is very well outfitted, being the titanium trim grade, and of the Escapes that I've test driven, I like the finishes and I like the quality of everything that I'm seeing and feeling here. A lot of soft touch materials, and in this color combination with the two-tone leather seats and the wood grain trim, I just think it's very appealing to look at. This is of course fake wood, but it is a very nice looking fake wood if you're into that kind of thing. The steering wheel I have ahead of me is a heated leather steering wheel with a lot of nice controls on it, a little bit of piano black trim, and ahead of me a very well lit and designed electronic fully digital instrument cluster, a big screen, and that is fully customizable, and it has a lot of information that you can see on it, including brake and hybrid coaches, in addition to all the metrics that you normally expect here with your trip information. The seats I'm sitting on are power adjustable, 10-way for the driver and less for the passenger. A nice perforated leather, and they are heated but not ventilated here. Like other Fords in this particular platform class, what I have found is that getting a comfortable spot in this seat, for me, tends to take a little bit of work. And it does have a little bit more adjustability than some of the other models out there, with the height having a little bit more flexibility than some, but it still was a little work to get a comfortable spot. I did find it though, and it is worth noting that these seats are on the firmer side. The center console is very simple and well laid out. A nice big cubby up front, and down in the lower part, a place to put your phone and to charge it with a wireless charger. 2 USB ports, both kinds, and a 12-volt port. Cup holders off to the side, and in the center, a knob gear selector. Not my favorite, but it does work well for the packaging. The drive mode selector buttons are handled to the rear of that. Storage in the center console, actually pretty generous, a little bit larger than a square tissue box. In fact, almost 2 of those could fit in there. I find that to be a pretty nice size for this class, and a nice soft covering on that. And the level for both of these armrests is even. I always love that in a car. With all the equipment that this vehicle has, there is a head-up display that mimics some of the information that you can see just a few inches below on the instrument cluster. It's kind of cute. It has a pop-up reflector, though you can put that down if you don't want it. Above my head is the panoramic moonroof, and you can open the front section. Your rear seat passengers are going to find that there's plenty of space back here, and as you can see, I am not cramped at all. These seats are set for my height, about 5'8" with my tennis shoes on. I've got plenty of leg room, and I've got plenty of headroom as well, even with the panoramic moonroof. And it does add a lot of atmosphere back here, very airy and spacious. Looking at the height of the seat, you can see that my knees are perched up just slightly, even though this does appear to be quite high. And part of that's because this has a higher floorboard because the hybrid battery rests under the floor here. So they had to sort of repackage things to make that fit down there. There is some adjustability here. I have a slide adjustment, and there's also a back rake adjustment on these seats. In spite of all the adjustments, I did find that finding a super comfortable spot back here was a little on the difficult side because this is a very short cushion. It's firm, and as I mentioned, the seating height, just you feel like you're just not in a natural seating position. Now, these do fold down in a 60-40 split to give you a cargo floor for that rear cargo hold. It's not entirely flat because, again, of the packaging with the battery. It is a pretty spacious area back there nonetheless. If you look underneath the cargo floor, you're going to find that we don't have a spare tire here. Instead, there is a fix-a-flat emergency repair kit, and the 12-volt battery for this vehicle actually sits where the spare tire would normally be. When it comes to rating this interior, I am pretty impressed across the board. The quality of the materials here, some of the best you're going to find in a Ford product, and the consistency of the materials throughout the interior is actually very good. Something Ford's not been so good at in the past. Switchgear, design. The only areas that really aren't really up to snuff, in my opinion, are some of the adjustability range for these seats, both front and rear. Finding a comfortable spot just takes a little bit of work, and I'd love to see something different than this twist knob gear selector. This interior gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. The infotainment system here is Sync 3, which is not the latest greatest from Ford, even though we are in a fully loaded Escape. It does have the high-end B&O sound system for this model. It does have a backup camera, but it is not a full 360-degree view, which at this price point, a lot of competitors are now offering. And the size of the screen is actually quite a bit smaller than some of the competitors are offering. It does have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, but they're not wireless yet. And while this does have good graphics and very easy to understand menu layouts, I have found that, like other Fords that I've tested the system in, sometimes it can be very slow to respond to your touch when you're navigating around in those menus. That can be a problem when you're driving and you have to hunt and peck and hit things a couple times to get where you're going. So the system, while it was one of the best when it first came out, is fast showing its age. It gets 4 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, now it's time to take a drive. And the first question I always like to ask is, how does it go? It's working. It's working. It's working. And 60. You can definitely tell this thing weighs nearly 4,000 pounds with me and a tank of gas in here. Actually, probably just a little bit more. This weighs in at 3,800 and some change. It's a heavy vehicle. Now, what's under the hood here is a hybrid powertrain consisting of a 2.5-liter gasoline engine and a 2-motor hybrid transmission for a total of 200 system horsepower. And this does have plug-in capability. There's a large lithium-ion battery pack under the rear of the passenger compartment. And with that, you can get up to 37 miles of EV only power, and then after that this pretty much becomes a regular hybrid vehicle. And so what I found with it during my week with it is that power is adequate at 200 horsepower, though you do notice you're in a heavy vehicle. This is not like the RAV4 Prime with 302 horsepower that almost feels like a rocket ship by comparison, yet it's not quite as efficient. Here, this is rated at 40 mpg combined in hybrid mode, and in electric mode, 105 mpge. Now, what do those numbers mean? Well, mpg is really hard to quantify. It's an equivalent, sort of a math computation to give you an equivalent when it's in EV mode. But when it's in hybrid mode, 40 mpg is just slightly less than you're going to get with the regular Escape hybrid, and that's simply because we're carrying the extra weight. When it comes to driving it, this behaves pretty much just like a Ford Escape hybrid. This is a powertrain that has a good level of refinement. It has a strong EV mode, which means not counting the battery EV mode, but when you're just driving hybrid mode, it has a strong electric motor that can power you around even at higher speeds in traffic, and even on the freeway if you're coasting downhill and you don't need that gas engine going. One of the reasons why it's so efficient. Now in EV mode, when you have a fully charged battery, this will still power on the gas motor every once in a while if you really mash the power pedal, or if the temperature conditions are such that it needs to have that engine running to either give you the extra power that you're asking for or to help charge the battery system. It just depends on the load. The software has an algorithm there, and the reason they do that is for power. The electric motor by itself doesn't have the power to give you what you might want if you're trying to pass or if you're trying to take off in traffic. Sometimes that motor will come on, which isn't always that way with some of the competitors. Some of them have a pure electric mode and it will only run the electric motor. So that is one thing that's different from some of the other vehicles out there. This is a system though that is well proven. It's not a science project. It's not rocket science. Ford has been building hybrids based on this system for over a decade. This is just the latest evolution of it. So nothing to worry about in terms of reliability. It's got a great record there. Now, when it comes to measuring efficiency, it's very hard to do with a plug-in hybrid because in my case, I plugged in the battery and used it. And when you blend electric with your gas tank, it's really hard to get a cut and dried number and say, that's what it's getting. Right now, it's reading 61 mpg on the dash because I've driven on electric power for parts of this tank. So it's just really hard to come up with, is it true or not? My experience is that Ford is very good with their numbers, and in many cases, they're actually a little bit on the low side. So you can expect to get what it promises, if not a little better in most cases. So powertrain gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now, when it comes to ride, drive, and handling, this is the one area where the plug-in hybrid differs slightly from the regular Ford Escape hybrid, and that is because of the extra weight of this hybrid battery. It is substantially larger, substantially heavier. So they've had to retune the suspension here to account for that extra weight. And one of the things that Ford does with their electric cars, and also on this one that I've noticed, is they tend to really stiffen up the damping. And the side effect of that, unfortunately, here is the fact that this has a bit of a bouncy ride, a bobbing ride, and that's because the shocks are very stiff. It is a firm ride, which isn't a bad thing, but the shock valving is such that it just doesn't have a lot of flowing refinement. Just something I've noticed both in the Mach-E electric, and I'm finding that here. Not something I've noticed in the competitor plug-in hybrids, so it's just a matter of suspension tuning. The road noise did surprise me as well. On my 70 mile an hour rolling average, this came in at 64.4 decibels. One of the higher numbers that I've seen, quite honestly. One of the things I would attribute that extra road noise to is the fact that this does have leather seats and that big panoramic moon roof. So there's extra wind noise with the roof, and I don't have cloth seats in here to absorb some of the sound that we get from road noise. Overall though, driving around town, I find that this is a very maneuverable vehicle. Because it has a short wheelbase, it's easy to park. It's got a nice tight turning radius, and getting it into parking spaces and getting through parking lots is a pretty livable thing in this vehicle. So ride and drive comes in at 4 out of 5 stars. Pricing out at just under $44,000, fully loaded here for the titanium plug-in hybrid model. We are in the same ballpark price-wise as most of the competitors, the Toyota RAV4 Prime, Hyundai, Kia, Mitsubishi. When you get into the plug-in, you're spending right around $40,000, give or take, and then it's just up and down depending on equipment and trim. The big things I look at here are the fact that this does not offer all-wheel drive. Some of the competitors have that standard. This does have a lot of equipment on it and creature comforts. There's a good level of quality here. Warranty coverage, not the best in the business. I would say it's class average. When you look at Hyundai and Kia, they offer a lot better warranty coverage on their vehicles. However, the hybrid system here, 8 years, 100,000 miles, everything else just falls down to lower levels. So when I calculate value, I put that here at 4.5 out of 5 stars. Still very good, definitely worth a look. It's very competitive. And when you put that in with everything else we've already talked about, we're at 4.5 stars for the review. Definitely worth a look if you're out there shopping for a plug-in hybrid crossover. And if you've done that already, you might have found that all of these vehicles come from a different perspective in terms of priorities and design. So they're not all the same. So there you go. Now, if you'd like to learn more about the hybrid system under the hood, how it works, what it's about, you can see our video on that right there, our partner channel, TDTV Garage. You can also subscribe to our channel right down there. Either way, stay tuned.